And welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion,
And I'm Sit.
and we are continuing our playthrough of Final Fantasy V and our discussion of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Right. So, there's a trend in I wouldn't say just fiction, but it's kind of also a societal thing. Of, for lack of a better way to put this, the weak-willed who seek power flock to authoritarian sources. We see this most clearly in Prisoner of Azkaban through the character of Peter Pettigrew, who, as we've mentioned before, when asked why would you betray your friends like that, why would you sell them out to Voldemort, well, he was taking over everywhere. What was to be gained by refusing him? Apparently a puppy is to be gained. Hi! How you doing? Anyway, so, Peter Pettigrew, who had known these people for a good chunk of his life, the first chance he got to gain favor with Wizard Hitler, stole his friends out to their death and framed another friend to cover it up. And then faked his own death so he wouldn't get in trouble, which meant he didn't even actually get to reap the benefits of the betrayal he sought.
Tasks failed successfully.
And when we were talking about animals and monsters before, well, we mentioned that, a rat is one of people's go-to insults if they're going to compare people to an animal. And, well, that's the animal he turned into. And I don't know how the animagus process works. It's never really gone into much detail in terms of, is there just an animal you're innately attuned to? Do you pick one? Because that could be really interesting to, like, if you're in high school and you want to study to become an animagus and you decide it'd be really cool if I picked this animal that sounds really neat when you're 16, and now you're 40 and you're just embarrassed about the fact that you picked this when you were a teenager and you're stuck with it forever. I don't know. I lost my train of thought there already.
A little bit.
But, yeah. And it's not just Peter, though. We've seen this multiple times already in the series. Dudley's friends. Harry mentions in the first book that they were going to the zoo with Piers Polkiss, who is basically one of the ones who holds the kids' hands behind their back while Dudley punches them. Piers is not described as being very physically imposing, but he runs around with Dudley, who is. So, Harry has already been very used to this dynamic because he's grown up around it, of just watching Dudley, who is the big ol' bully on the playground, have weaker bullies who also want to be top dog on campus flock to him so they can get a little bit of trickle-down social cred. What are your thoughts on this?
This is a very, very common stereotype and trope that basically has been part of fiction and fantasy for basically forever. And it's a quick and easy way to have a character who well, obviously, for one, it's a quick and easy way to get a betrayal story going. And two, it's, I did not want to kill that, but okay. Two, it's a very easy way to explain why someone who is nominally, for lack of a better way to put it, a decent person, at least in theory, would throw their allegiance to the story's villain. Someone who is of mediocre capability sees that the villain is gaining power, gaining influence, gaining control, containing all of that sort of thing, sees that as basically their only option for survival, and their reaction to it is, I'm going to throw my lot in with this person who's doing all of the bad things, because it's better to be with them than to be on the losing side.
And there is actually a term for this. Someone who sells out their side to the enemy who is working their way in is known as a quisling. And as with many unpleasant terms like this term got its origin during World War II. You can guess what was going on there.
So where precisely did that word come from? Because
it was someone's name.
That's what I figured.
According to Google, it was Major Vidkun Quisling of Norway. So, yeah, it's named for someone, just like, Benedict Arnold means traitor because Benedict Arnold.
Yep, I was just curious what the story was, because while I was aware that was the term, I did not know of the full details of its origins.
Yep, the brief blip that comes up for the etymology for the definition is origin, Second World War, from the name of the Norwegian army officer and diplomat who ruled Norway on behalf of the German occupying forces. Definition, a traitor who collaborates with an enemy force occupying their territory.
Yay!
Which we could honestly say is probably a good way to describe Peter Pettigrew.
Yep. Spot on.
Yep. So, we do actually have another example of this, which kind of twists it a little bit in the sense of, these characters are absolutely seeking out power, but they're the more physically imposing. Crabbe and Goyle. Flock to Draco Malfoy, who is kind of a skinny little brat, but the thing about Wizarding World, you don't have to have big old muscles to be a formidable foe. You just have to have a magic.
Yep.
So, yeah. I don't think we've ever seen Crabbe and Goyle, to this point in the series, express an independent thought. The closest we came was when we saw them do that because Crabbe and Goyle were actually carried on committing identity fraud. But, I don't think that counts for our purposes here. They don't really express any agency outside of what Malfoy tells them to do. They go along with whatever they're told, and they're basically just there to back him up. To put this in an incredibly stupid way that you're not going to get, and I'm saying for my own amusement, Malfoy is Heather Chandler, and Crabbe and Goyle are Heather McNamara and Heather Duke.
Oh, I vaguely recognize that there was something with a bunch of Heathers in it, but I don't remember.
It's called Heathers.
Okay.
They made it into a musical a few years ago, and it's got a
few
catchy
catchy songs.
songs.
I was thinking of.
You're thinking of the Ashleys and Recess.
Yes! I was about to say, I couldn't remember the name, but I know it was Recess. Yeah, the Ashleys.
The Ashleys are absolutely PG-friendly Heathers.
You know what? Yeah. They really are. Oh, wait, no.
So you have the lead bully, and you have the lackeys who are just there to reap the benefits. I am sorry for derailing Harry Potter into discussion of Heathers.
You know what? No, this is fine. I am okay with this. I am perfectly happy with this, Oh, I'm out of money. Well, crud.
Yeah. And I kind of wonder if it's just a narrative twist as well, just to have these sort of characters around. They're very non-offensive in and of themselves, but since they gravitate toward whoever happens to be the momentary authority, good or bad, usually bad because they want personal gain, I think it's also just a way to explain why people are willing to be around the other person. Because, if you're a kid reading a book like this for the first time and you see, wow, this person is awful, why would anyone spend time with them? because they have something to gain. They're not hanging out with them for their personality unless they have a similarly awful personality, which could well be the case. That guy is having a dance. Could well be the case with Crabbe and Goyle to Malfoy because, well, we have never seen them gainsay anything Malfoy has said about any of the groups that Malfoy doesn't like. They could be perfectly on board with all of that. But they could also just as easily be along for the ride and not willing to say anything. They have not actually said anything one way or another, so at this point in the series, Book 3, we don't have any evidence, just our own speculation. However, it would often be common to take the lack of evidence to the contrary as evidence that they support, because, you know, supporting something tacitly is still supporting it.
It's about to say
You're not doing anything to stop it.
silence is consent.
Yes.
Especially in a matter of...
It can be perceived as.
Yeah.
Can we be careful with that phrasing?
Yeah, very good point. But yes, especially in a situation where someone is doing something immoral or inappropriate, and you are observing it and not speaking out against it.
Yep. So, it's honestly, I like that they have this in this book because, again, it's aimed at fairly young children. Like, I was about 9 or 10 when they came out, and I was right in the target audience.
Right.
So it's a kind of a good intro to moral ambiguity, because how could someone who was at my parents' wedding, who was their friend, so on and so forth, be the reason they are dead is not an easy thing to answer. Because if you watch a lot of, at least when I was a kid, there was not as much nuance in kids' media. Bad guys were bad guys, good guys were good guys. And redemption arcs were few and far between. I think that's gotten a lot more inaccurate these days because I'll think of a character that might have started that shift, because the first one I remember being a really big deal was Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was a huge deal, and I don't care if I'm spoiling it, the show's been out for ages. It was a huge deal that there were cracks in his loyalty to the Fire Nation, and they were telegraphing that he could possibly be redeemed one day. So when it finally happened, everyone was like, yay! And after that, there's been a lot more characters that I have noticed in kids' media who go through the I was a villain and now I'm on your side arc. Hi, Catra.
And it's hardly something that's completely new, but it is something that is not as common in a lot of older media, and what was more common in older media was the fall of the hero. Where, especially in classic media, like, going back to, like... This goes back to Greek myth.
The classical anti-hero.
Yeah, the tragedy of the myth was that the hero would be undone by their own hubris and their own
fatal flaws.
Fatal flaws, yeah, thank you. And a lot of the way that translates into more modern media is that while the heroes, the main protagonists and such, are typically more heroic consistently, there was a pattern of regularity to some of the villains being fallen heroes, and those who had once been of good character and had fallen away from the straight and narrow. Also, wow, Galuf is nearly dead.
I mean, you don't have to call him on that, we know he's old.
Or he could get healed, that works too.
But yeah, like, the idea is not a new thing. Redemption stories can happen over time and have happened in older stories, but I'm talking about like media aimed at younger audiences. I do not remember there being a whole lot of redemption arc media in shows I saw when I was a kid.
Oh no, it is definitely
characters
something
didn't
that has
change
become more common
Yeah.
in...
Yeah. So, like, I think it's interesting that, but it has started to happen because it shows not just that sometimes bad people can do good things and be redeemed, but also the reverse. Everyone can change. You have to so it kind of sends the message to the audience that you have to keep consistently trying to be a better person, to stay a good person, because otherwise you could end up falling to the dark side, for lack of a better way to put that.
It's actually a really good way to put that, because the entire arc of the original Star Wars was, at least after the first movie, well, no, even in the first movie, was Darth Vader used to be a good guy and a hero and the best friend of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then suddenly he was the bad guy, and obviously we didn't learn that until the second movie, but...
Yeah, I would disagree with him being best friends with Obi-Wan, because having seen the prequels, I think Obi-Wan just looks, like, done with Anakin every time he opens his mouth, but let's be fair, it is Anakin opening his mouth and talking about sand.
Yeah.
But they were on the same side and were on positive terms, more or less. So, yeah. But, yeah. And even in Star Wars, you have characters who will, well, I could gain something from this, and it will give me more immediate benefit than doing this thing, so hi, Lando. I have sold out your location to the Empire. Pay me now.
I've altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it further.
But yeah, I think it's a good lesson to teach kids that people can change over time, which means if you want to be a good person, you have to consistently make the effort to do that, and encourage your friends to get through tougher times so they don't fall prey to that as well. Support people, because I wonder if Peter Pettigrew maybe was more susceptible because he was a little bit more of an outsider in that group. Remember when the teachers were talking about the Marauders when they didn't know the kids were listening, they had mentioned that Peter Pettigrew was always following them around. So I don't think he was as tightly knit with the rest of that group as the others were.
That's definitely one way that could be read. I don't know if I'd be... It's too vague to be completely confirmed, but it would definitely be the way that I would lean.
Yeah, this is not to say it is an excuse. Everybody makes their own decisions,
Absolutely.
and nobody made Peter Pettigrew betray his friends to the dark side. Peter did that all by himself, so I think it would be very easy to fall into that trap, however, of just saying, well, he was more lonely, and therefore that is why he did the thing, and that means if we just get rid of bullying, that'll fix everything. And honey, I would love to get rid of bullying because it needs to stop, but I don't think there's going to be a way to get people to stop wanting to be awful to other people without having a radical shift in society, which I would love to know how to do because it's ridiculous and needs to stop, but there's always going to be something that will tempt people to cause harm to others for personal gain.
Yep.
In no small part due to the fact that, well, some people, particularly in high school, see social cred as an extension of mercantilism. And to explain, I mean, there is a limited amount of social credit I can have. If I'm going to gain status, I have to take that away from somebody else, which is bananas, but people really seem to buy into that, and I think that's where a lot of clique-related bullying comes into play.
It's an extremely common mindset in my experience, because I have never not seen... I mean, it's even in our media for that age. So much of the media about high school age kids and all the associated drama is about there is the popular person, then the story happens, and something happens to make another character, usually the protagonist, become more popular, and the popular kid takes this as a personal threat. This is not in any way abnormal or unusual to our shared cultural experience of how school works. This is a very, quote-unquote, normal part of how society has more or less defined how things are in a school setting. And while it's terrible and it gives a horrible example for kids to follow, it's extremely relatable for that reason. Because we have all been there. We've all seen what this is like, and it's similar enough to real life that we all see this and sympathize with it.
Yep. And I think that's where you get this trope from. This, I am too weak to be a villain on my own. I cannot actually take this from other people without help, so I'm going to attach myself to, like a remora, to the biggest, baddest baby shark in the pond,
and let them
do it for me.
And I'm too scared to be a hero, or even just do the right thing on my own.
Because I don't have enough social credit to weather anything that's leveled against me.
Yep.
Or I'm afraid that I will lose too much social standing if anything chips away at the little foundation I've managed to gather.
Yep.
So, much like the world's economic system, I think the best thing we can advocate is to abandon the practice of mercantilism and get with something that actually makes sense with the abstract concept of who makes friends with whom. Friendship is not a physical resource. It is an intangible thing, and you are not limited to the amount of friends you can have or the amount of friends your friends can have. So, what if we just stopped giving each other swirlies and grew up?
I'd be behind that. How about you?
I mean,
you have to deal with this on a daily basis. Maybe not the individual bullying scenarios of every day somebody's getting their head dunked in a toilet, but you work in a school, you see all of this firsthand.
It's usually actually better hidden than you'd think. The kids who like to try and pull this kind of crap know how to toe the line until you have just enough deniability that you suspect, but you can't actually go to administration without having concrete proof.
Right.
It's really frustrating.
Which is what makes characters like Malfoy all the more frustrating to read about, because you're like, I know people who behave like this.
Oh god, like, Malfoy should be expelled like 10 times over for the crap he gets away with, but he won't be because his dad owns the school board.
Which is also something that you have mentioned, having to deal with situations that were similar, and even me, as not a teacher, have had to deal with situations similar enough to that in my experiences back when I was in school, and in what interactions I've had with the public school system since I grew up.
But, yeah, it's a trope that shows up quite a lot. I think there's good reason for it. I think there's good merit to doing so, to having it, but I wish as an actual real-life inspiration the concept would go away, because if you take away the support of your alpha bullies, they don't really have as much to work with, and maybe, just maybe, they'll start being able to work through some stuff in a way that doesn't involve putting someone else through the ringer. Who knows? Maybe I'm just an optimist.
It would be very nice.
But I'm running kind of dry here on inspiration for talking about this. What say you?
I think that's a decent enough place to leave it.
Alright, until next time. Bye!
Catch y'all next time.